Well, hello friends. I think it's about time we take this thing for an extensive test drive. See how she runs. That's how I get down from my Peterbilt 362. Isn't that sweet? It's kind of like coming down one of them old fire poles. They used to have in the firehouse. You slide down, you get in the truck and go. But hey friends, let's go ahead and take a test drive. Let me tell you a little bit about this truck, where it came from, what I've done to it, how it got to the state it is right now before we get going. So first and foremost, I want to say what I did wrong and what I did right when I bought the truck. I bought it at a Taylor and Martin auction. And what I did wrong is I didn't go look at the truck in person with my own eyes. That's what I did wrong, because let me tell you something. They didn't take pictures of the biggest blemishes you've ever seen. What I did right is I bought an American icon, a Peterbilt 362, and you can't really go wrong in the end when you buy an American icon. This truck is a 1987 Peterbilt 362 with a Big Cam IV Cummins engine. Why did I really like the idea of a Big Cam IV Cummins engine? It's a mechanical motor. It's called the working man's engine because the working man can fix it, overhaul it, keep it on the road without a whole lot of knowledge. You grab a manual for the Big Cam 4, and even if you're not really that great with mechanical stuff, you can keep this thing going. This is a working man's truck with a working man's engine in it. Now, is the Big Cam 4 the way to go for like all your trucks? No, I wouldn't have a fleet of these. If I was going to do if I was really going to go over the road and do a lot of that stuff, I would say you'd want an electronic motor. But for this particular build, I decided, hey, let's do the Big Cam the way it was. So after I bought the truck, I had it delivered on a step deck. And the first thing I noticed when I got it was, oh my goodness, this is a lot different than the pictures. Oh wow, it's got so much work it's going to need to have done to it. For one, it had these gigantic Freightliner fuel tanks on it. I took those off and sold them, and I put some smaller, I put 26-inch tanks on it. These other tanks were just way too big. When it came off the step deck, it actually drug right off the freaking step deck, and the guy didn't even care. He's like, it looks like you got a piece of junk anyway. And the other thing was it had a cutoff on it, and the cutoff was atrocious. I knew right away, wow, no pictures were taken of the cutoff. And you could see like the weld where they put the cutoff on, and the weld was not a good weld, I can tell you that. And then the sleeves, they put sleeves inside. Let me show you. So you can't see all the damage right here right now, but when I got it, it had these inner rails inside of it to mount this frame to that frame. The stub was actually way too short. You can see I've made this at least about 2 feet on each side of where the weld is to mount this frame to that frame. Not only was it short, but they actually didn't even drill the holes. They just torched the holes in the piece of frame they put inside of it. This has to be a special frame, and I actually found a place in Vermont that makes the frame to the correct strength. But now we've got this thing up and running good. There's a lot of dangers to buying something that has a cutoff on it, but one of the big ones is they didn't do everything correctly, or they didn't cut the drive shaft down to the correct size to put it on. I had to jack this whole frame clear up off the ground and let the wheels basically dangle down in order to get the drive shaft to even come off, because it was so tight. And what ends up happening is this drive shaft is pushing real hard against the rear ends. So of course, I got to change the rear ends when I got the truck as well. So along with the rear ends, I ended up replacing everything else there is to pretty much replace in the rear end. I replaced all the wheel bearings, the seals, the S-cams, the brakes. I kept the same rims. I just sanded them down and shined them up a little. When I got the truck, it had all different airbags on it. And so immediately I put all the correct airbags on it. And then I changed out almost all the airlines, because what you don't want to do is replace like a bad airline, and then you go down the road and another airline blows out and another airline blows out. And then pretty much you spend 10 times as much money replacing one airline at a time than you would if you just replaced all the airlines. The interior was in pretty good shape. It's just missing that one part right up there. It kind of looks like this piece right here with the speaker box in it. I just haven't been able to find it yet. But I did remove everything and scrub it down because, of course, right here, you know how many people in the 1990s smoked cigarettes. This thing was completely brown, and I had to scrub it all out. And it did clean up nice. Now, I didn't do a big interior job because this is a work-in truck. This is not a show truck. I did not want a show truck. If I'm flatbedding, I want to be able to kick my boots off, put my stuff on, and not worry about ruining a $30,000 interior or something crazy like this. Mechanically, one of the hardest things I had to deal with was the shifter. This shifter would not go into third gear here because the bushings were all shot. So I had to figure out how to rebuild that shift linkage because they don't sell it anymore. But now it's a lot better. I did add a couple things to the dash. I added an exhaust temperature gauge so I can see how hot that thing is getting, because it is important with the Big Cam 4 that you don't get it too hot. If it gets too hot, you will melt that baby down. And then I added a boost gauge. This is my Big Cam 4 behind me. It's not the original engine that came in the truck. I wish it had worked out with the original engine, but we just didn't get along. I knew I was going to have problems right away when I took a look at the radiator that came with the truck. The Big Cam 4 is a low flow system, and the truck was still low flow at that point, but the radiator was a high flow system. I don't know what in the world was going on. They switched the upper tank to the new radiator they put in so they could hook everything up, but the lower tank was still actually looked like it was off a W900. There's no baffle down there, nothing to really match up with what a low flow should be. So I knew we might have some issues with some overheating because those low flows are a little finicky. When I popped the injectors out, some of the injectors had this slime all over it. It was like milky, kind of looked like you dumped a bunch of aniseeds in it or something like this, and it had rockiness to it. There's like little pebbles inside of it as well. It was inside the cylinder. So I popped the heads off to see what in the world's going on here. And some of the cylinders just had like inside the cylinder was just covered in this stuff. So I said, well, this isn't good. And I looked at the surface of the deck, and the deck looked like it had some crackage in it. And I said, okay, well, we're not going to probably go with this block. So I ended up finding another Big Cam 4 over in Tennessee. Let me tell you something. I drove 12 hours to go get the NT88. It was in 1991. That's what's in it now. The guy said it turned over. Everything was good. I got it for a good price, and I even got a transmission with it for free. So I said, okay, I went up and got it. I get there, and he goes, oh, by the way, this morning it doesn't turn over anymore. I'm like, what? He's like, no, it doesn't turn over. It just stopped turning over out of the blue. I'm like, well, how convenient. That's really cool how it does that, huh? So since the guy was a mechanic, I was really kind of upset about this whole thing. I said, well, let me take it home. Then we'll see if it works. Otherwise, we're going to have a problem. So I took it home, took it apart, and yes, the crank it wasn't like a spun bearing. The block wasn't shot. It was just, it had been sitting so long, it had water inside the cylinders, and it had locked it up. And the only real consequence of that was that all that water had sat on top of the crank. And when it sat on top of the crank, it made one of the journals a little rusted out. So I ended up having to have it ground down. The challenge for converting this to a high flow engine was finding all these parts. So the thermostat housing, not a big deal. You can get that on Amazon for like $100 and some. But the rest of the parts I really had to search around by using different CPLs from Big Cam 3s, and then finding those part numbers and then searching for those parts. You can see I did have to do a little custom work. So I had to build this actual pipe out right here for the oil cooler. That I had to build. And then I had to, this air pipe, I had to cut it, and then I had to weld it back together to make a right angle instead of the curve that was there, so that it could go around, I don't know if you can see it, so it could go around that thermostat housing. So this is the shifter I was talking about. That box connects to the shifter that goes inside the cab, and then it connects to this shift linkage, right? And then that connects all the way back to the transmission. And where it connects right here, this is what gives everyone problems. If you hear about anyone having problems with their shift linkage, it's probably this. These shafts right here become all wallowed out or or they just get wore down and they have to be replaced, welded on new ones, and these get bad too. So I ended up having to have that done and new bushings installed because they don't sell this unit, and it did cost a pretty penny. I won't lie. I think it was like $700. Guy said, hey, yeah, don't worry about it. It ain't gonna cost hardly nothing. I said, oh, okay, that's great, man. I go back there and I have a bill for $700. I was like, well, I don't really think that was like really cheap, but you got to do what you got to do. I'll tell you about the engine real quick. I took every bolt off this entire engine. I took it to a machine shop, had it surfaced, counterboard, checked for cracks and everything before I put it back together and put a rebuild kit in it. I had the fuel pump done at Premco. If you have a Big Cam Cummins, you got to go to Premco. They're the best. And then I got 6 injectors from Premco as well. The fuel lines are pretty simple. They're just brake lines that you take and you make into fuel lines. And I added a fuel line to the other side of the head, so that way it's got dual fuel headlines. On the turbo side, I went ahead and put the 4 series on. I decided to go with the 4 because there was a really good guy I met that said, hey, I'm selling mine because I'm putting the N14 on because I'm doing a different setup on my Big Cam. And I said, you know what, let me go ahead and buy that from you. So I bought it and I put this on. Now a truck wouldn't be complete without AC, now would it? So this one did not come with an AC compressor. It didn't have anything on it. It had all the other components. I had to rebuild the box and put everything back together and do a lot of work, but I bought a compressor, put it on, and the AC works and everything seems to go together just fine. I did update the clutch when I took it apart. I didn't put that little baby one back in. I went ahead and put a nice easy pedal in there, big disc. And the only thing I did that I put something really trashy in here was this old 9-speed that I got for free. I tried selling this thing for like $200 and nobody would buy it. And I thought, well, they probably just think it doesn't work. So I put some fluid in it, threw it on here. It's real easy to take out, so when I get a different one, I'll just put it in. But it actually works just fine. So I think I actually made some money on it, because now I can say with confidence, this transmission works great. Here's my really super nice, expensive windshield washer fluid reservoir. I just drilled some holes in the top of this thing and then put the pipes in and glued them in. It seems to be working all right. So for now, that's going to be what my windshield wiper fluid goes in. So when I got this truck, it had one little baby stack. Now there's 2 things I really just don't like on trucks. One is a single stack, and the other thing is I don't like the fake stacks where you see the still chromy inside of it and you know it's not even something that's functional. It's just there for looks. I like my stacks to do the job. So I built this setup right here to put dual stacks on it. I had some extra metal sitting around. I didn't actually go out and buy any of this stuff. I just used stuff I had around the shop, and I built this, and it worked out pretty good. Now, the worst thing about this truck when I got it was the paint. There is absolutely no denying that the paint was the worst thing about the entire build for me. Because if you find a truck that has, say, faded paint or the clear coat's peeling off, that's not a problem. That's easy. It's when somebody comes in and botches a paint job, that makes the job a whole lot harder. So whoever had gotten it before me at some point had sprayed it with some kind of very thick paint. It looked kind of like, on a lot of spots, it looked like the stuff you would spray on sheetrock, especially the ceiling. It's kind of like a popcorn texture, and it was just globbed on in different places. And so you had to really sand it down. I tried to get it sandblasted. A couple of guys I called, they all said the same thing. No, it's very delicate aluminum. We will absolutely destroy it if we do it, so we're not going to do it. So no one around here would touch it with their sandblaster. Maybe somewhere else someone has a different process, they would have been able to do that. That would have been helpful. And the paint removers that they have now, they're missing the chemical. So any videos you see where they just slap it on there and all the paint falls off, that don't work anymore. All right, so that's the build. It's enough chit chat for right now. I hear the highway calling my name. It's time to see what this thing can do. First long test drive. I'm going to go for a long test drive this thing's had. I'm pretty excited. In the words of Clark W. Griswold, I want people to eat my rubber, and I'm ready to burn some dust. All right, time to put the seatbelt on. Ready to head out. I think I need some fuel. We'll go ahead and see if we can get that. All right. Together, right? Ooh, baby. There's a military base right over there. Ooh, yeah, they put some new road down. Just in time, baby. This is all new. Well, I'm gonna find out if these bearings work, I tell you that. Also really hot out. Seatbelts. Come on, people. Yeah. They didn't want to take my money. I had to go all the way inside. Best flying J you ever seen in your life. I want to check the wheel seals, make sure they're not blowing out already. Those fuel aisles are so nasty, you don't want to get down on that, I'll tell you that. Whoa there! Look at that cowboy. Jeez. Hell. Some people. Oh, I better watch out. Warner coming through with the splashers on. Woo, baby. Yeah, rolling hot. Something, trucking is a lot different than it used to be. I was a kid, it wasn't like this. Hey, it's the truck driving school. I went to the truck driving school with my daddy, okay? I sat over there for a long time, and Daddy finally put me in the seat when I was 12 or 11 or something like this. He was the best teacher you could possibly have. They don't teach them like that at that school. I'd like him to go work with my daddy. Of course, he could tell you a lot of crazy stories about training his son. I think there's probably stories that still wake him up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, help us, we're gonna die.
Could have sworn you said you were out of town. I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. Who would have thought I'd find you out messing around? So why are you here now, crying at my door, trying to tell me that he's just a friend, when I know darn well that friends don't hold each other that close? I believe your pretty lies and let you back in. You keep playing games, girl, with my heart, and I'm constantly out here on the move, just trying to stay in the game, make no mistakes along the way. And just when I think I got you figured out, you go and change the rules again. You don't like to lose, so you gotta cheat to win.
We made it back. I think everything went really well. I'm really happy with everything. I checked the wheel seals on a turn down there, and it looks like everything looks good. So it was a success. I think Pearl's doing great, and I can't wait to go ahead and get this alignment done. But for now, that's going to be it on this one. I'll see you on the next one. Take care, y'all.